Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video. In today's video, I want to put together another weekly news roundup to go over some of the most important information that surfaced this past week. There's some exciting information that sheds some light on just how much story content we'll have in game, and how some of the weapons have changed since the beta, thanks to issue number 310 of Edge magazine. There's also some more information on how our beta feedback had led to changes to the final game from the most recent Bungie blog post, and a few other tidbits of information here and there. So in the event that you've been busy this week, or you just haven't been following every single thing, then here is what you need to know. If you do enjoy this and you do find it helpful, then a like would be super appreciated, and be sure to comment down below and share your thoughts. Now, to begin with, I want to turn my attention to some pretty exciting stuff that comes from issue number 310 of Edge magazine. For those of you guys in the States, Edge magazine is a UK gaming publication. If you have a subscription, which I do, then the magazine often gets sent out a little earlier. I'm still waiting for mine to arrive, but Reddit user Capoaz shared a few interesting snippets that are worth talking about. Firstly, story content. We know that Destiny 2 is bigger than Destiny 1. We've been told that the maps are 2 times as big as the biggest map in Destiny 1, and that we'll have stuff to do both throughout the campaign and once everything is done. We have story missions, flashpoints, adventures, lost sectors, treasure maps, patrols, public events, and much more. But what's particularly exciting is that the Edge article says that there are quote-unquote over 80 missions and PvE activities, and each are substantial in length, challenge, story, and reward. Now, whether that 80 plus is story missions and adventures or lost sectors rolled into one will of course remain to be seen. But if we take a moment to look at Destiny 1, the vanilla game had 22 missions, 5 on each planet plus 2 on the Reef. Dark Below then added an additional 3, House of Wolves added 5, Taken King added 8, and Rise of Iron a further 5. So that's a grand total of 43 missions with a few extra things here and there. So already, 80 plus story missions and PvE activities alone already brings the total well above what we had in Destiny 1 and all the expansions put together. Now, humour me for just a moment, but if we assume the average length of a story mission is around 15 minutes, give or take. I mean, after all, the article said they were substantial in length and difficulty. Assuming for a moment that 80 plus activities each come in at around 15 minutes each. That is a total of 20 hours worth of story content, and that's just assuming the 15-minute completion time. If any of them end up being longer, say 20 minutes, then we're looking at a campaign that could be around 20 to 30 hours, which is pretty awesome and substantially bigger than we've ever had before. Now, of course, it goes without saying that I, and I'm pretty sure most of you, sincerely hope that amongst those 80 missions we have plenty of cutscenes and story, and it's not just say 10 or 15 great missions and 65 or 70 filler missions. Supposedly, there are over 45 cutscenes, so I'm pretty hopeful that there will be plenty of good content within that, but again, only time will tell. Additionally, from the article, and something that further complements the content side of things, supposedly at one point in development they had quote-unquote so much new content that they realised they had more content than progression. Now this is something they have subsequently fixed, but with that in mind, it really creates this image or this impression that they've been piling the content in to really try to ensure we have stuff to keep us busy. I mean, with Destiny 1, it was an experiment really. I guess before it came out, they never knew it would be as big a hit as it was. And while Destiny 1 wasn't perfect, people still sunk hours into it and demanded more. But now that they know how hungry people are for content, and for things to do, I imagine they're really trying to sort of double down on the content side of things and fully flesh out the experience. I know that following the beta, some people were left a little bit unsure, especially since all the kind of cool new stuff, the stuff that we really want to see, was hidden away from us. But with all of this in mind, I for one am super excited to dive in and explore what the game has to offer. On top of that, something else in the PvE space, but supposedly in Destiny 2, Nightfall strikes will now have a time limit. Now this will vary from strike to strike, but one example was as little as 13 minutes. Now 13 minutes for a normal strike, especially if it's say the length of the Inverted Spire, is pretty quick. So to do a Nightfall in that time, that is going to require some serious skill and coordination. Now of course we don't know whether there will always be a timer or whether it will be like a modifier, how we're kind of used to. 1 week maybe there's a timer, 1 week maybe there's a burn, something like that. But that in itself could be one example of how there will still be challenging content for those that crave it. I mean, some of the changes that we've seen recently have almost made it look like the entire experience, the Destiny experience, is being simplified, and some of the people then began to wonder where the challenge factor will be. Obviously we'll still have raids, but if Nightfalls now present a far greater challenge than ever before, that is going to be something super fun to dive into on a weekly basis, especially if the rewards are good. Furthermore, something else that came from the article was a mention on energy weapons. Now, from our experience thus far, a lot of people were left a little underwhelmed. To go from Destiny 1, where you run around with, say, a primary, a secondary, and a heavy, something like Scout, Sniper and Rocket Launcher, to then go to something like Scout, another Scout and a Sniper, people felt pretty underpowered. Now, we already know that damage tuning was a little outdated on the beta build, but thanks to the Edge article, we also know there was an entirely new mechanic that we were never exposed to, and could potentially explain the energy-based weapons and why they exist. Right now, we know that energy weapons are especially good at taking down shields, or Guardians with Super in the Crucible. But in the final implementation of the game, energy weapons are great again for dealing with shields, but on top of that, when an enemy's shield is depleted, it explodes, nuking any enemies that happen to be nearby. Now that in itself is an absolute game changer. I'm sure a lot of you, in beta at least, use kind of kinetic and energy weapons somewhat interchangeably, maybe just when you ran out of ammo, but with this knowledge in mind there will be whole strategies around grouping enemies around a shielded one to then focus fire on that with energy weapons to nuke the surrounding ads. I can see that being something that's like especially prevalent in raids, perhaps a great way to deal with select encounters. Or even more so, think of that in say one of the new timed Nightfalls. Assuming burns still make a return, there could be some incredible ways to dispatch large groups of enemies very quickly if this sort of playstyle is factored in. I'm unsure whether this new implementation will be present in the PC beta, since they did say some of the changes would be, but if not, then at least there's hope for a little bit more power back in our hands in September 6th. Now, outside of the main points, the article said that the team did witness a few other things, but Bungie requested that they did not reveal these before launch. One of those things supposedly revolves around the Hunter class that, quote-unquote, left reviewers happy that the class will shape up well. Not entirely sure what this means, but if you look at the common complaint or theme behind the complaints for the Hunter, it's that it doesn't really support the team like the other classes. Warlocks have rifts, you drop them, your team group up, you do damage, or you heal. Titans have barricades, if things get serious, you get behind it, you shoot, or you just block off a walkway, and it's a good way to kind of like, group up with your team. Hunters can evade. If things get bad, they can save themselves, but their team are left for dead. Now obviously we don't know what this change is, since Edge weren't able to talk about it, but if it's a confirmation that the class will quote-unquote shape up well, perhaps post-game there are more to subclasses than we've been exposed to. I mean, the other common complaint for all classes was how simple the subclasses are. You have a choice of jump, grenade, class ability, and one of two paths. What if, say, when you get to post-game you unlock more ways to customize your subclass? What if there are more abilities? Or maybe this ties back into something that Mark Noseworthy said a while ago when asked whether Nightstalker, Sunbreaker and Stormcaller will be returning, and he simply said that they didn't want to reveal everything before launch. Maybe there's more to unlock later, but again, only time will tell. What do you guys think? Additionally, they made mention of supers and grenades and the fact that they do recharge a bit faster than the beta, but in truth, Bungie wanted to encourage more aggressive play as the means to get that quicker recharge. An example of this that they gave was that there is actually a Warlock exotic item, similar to Imperium Bellicose, which allows you to hover in air, and if you get kills whilst in air, you get faster recharge of your grenades. So there will be armor and equipment that lends itself to this sort of playstyle. But since we had none of that in the beta, what we had was a pretty bare bones experience. Now that's pretty much it for the Edge magazine stuff, but turning our attention to this week at Bungie, the most recent blog post also helped shed some more light on how our beta feedback shaped the final game. One of the biggest changes, and this will be good news for those of you guys that are PvP players out there, one of the main complaints was that these two new playlists, Quick Play and Competitive, didn't actually offer anything different on the matchmaking front. There were simply just two different modes. We know for the final game, Quick Play will have 3 modes, Control, Clash and Supremacy, meanwhile Competitive will have Countdown and Survival. But in this week's blog post, they detailed how the matchmaking behind these two playlists will differ. For Quick Play, they said, and I quote, "Matchmaking times will be shorter, with less emphasis on skill. This is the fastest route to a game, but you may face opponents outside of your comfort zone. The winning scoring control has been extended from 75 to 100 to allow more time to play and use your abilities because too many matches were shorter than we expected, and some Guardians weren't even able to charge their supers. We've extended the trigger on the Mercy rule so it comes into play less often." Meanwhile, for Competitive, they said, quote unquote, "Matchmaking takes more time to introduce you to players that are closer to you in skill, with a good connection. These matchmaking settings may take longer, but we feel that the quality of the gameplay experience will be worth the wait. We have also made improvements to the way we calculate your skill in Countdown to better reflect how you perform against your opponents." Now obviously we won't know until we get to test this just what these changes feel like, but knowing that these playlists do genuinely matchmake players differently, that in itself should at least result in different experiences. And furthermore, knowing that they're also tuned differently means that once the game launches, things can also be changed further if necessary. On top of that, some of the sandbox changes, I'm not going to read all of these in detail, instead I will link the post down below in case you guys want to check them out for yourselves, but The summary is that the infinite super glitch has been fixed, so has the Warlock glide glitch and the infinite grenade glitch. Warlocks also now have the same melee range as other classes. They also globally reduce the time it takes to charge your super, so while it won't be as fast as Destiny 1, you will still see it more frequently than you did in the beta. And they also increased the grenade damage in PvE only, and tweaked power ammo drops also in PvE. So once again, a lot of the main complaints from the beta, even if we were playing an older build, have been addressed. And that, my friends, is pretty much it for the time being. Don't forget that this weekend is the very last Trials of Osiris before Destiny 2, so if you do want to jump in for one last run to the Lighthouse, you have the weekend to do it. All maps are in rotation, so it's a good final send-off. As always, comment down below and let me know what you guys think of all this information, and thank you very much for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.